Claudette Colvin was born on September 5, 1939, in Montgomery, Alabama. She was originally named Claudette Austin but was raised by her great-aunt and great-uncle, Mary Ann and Q.P. Colvin, who adopted her and gave her their surname. She grew up in a poor neighborhood in Montgomery called King Hill, which was later bulldozed to build a shopping center. Colvin attended Booker T. Washington High School, where she was an excellent student. She was particularly interested in history and the Constitution. Having studied the Bill of Rights and the 14th Amendment in school, these studies would prove significant in shaping her understanding of justice and her rights as an American citizen. On March 2, 1955, 15-year-old Claudette Colvin boarded a Capitol Heights bus in Montgomery after school. She sat in the middle section of the bus, which at the time was a sort of gray area where black passengers could sit if there were no white passengers standing. As the bus filled up, the driver ordered Colvin and 3 other black students to give up their seats to white passengers. While the other 3 moved, Colvin refused. She later recalled feeling as though Sojourner Truth was on one side of her, and Harriet Tubman was on the other, giving her strength. When the driver asked why she wouldn't move, she told him it was her constitutional right to sit there. Police were called, and 2 officers forcibly removed her from the bus, handcuffing her and taking her to jail. She was charged with violating the segregation law, disorderly conduct, and assaulting the police officers, a charge she vehemently denied. The experience was traumatic for the young teenager. She spent several hours in an adult jail cell before her family could bail her out. Her case went to court, and while the segregation charge was dropped, she was convicted of assaulting an officer and placed on probation. After her arrest, local civil rights leaders, including Rosa Parks, who was secretary of the Montgomery NAACP at the time, and E.D. Nixon, initially considered making Colvin's case a test case to challenge bus segregation. However, they ultimately decided against it for several reasons. She was only 15, and they worried about her ability to withstand the intense pressure and scrutiny. She came from a working-class family without significant resources. Her demeanor was seen as too feisty or confrontational for some. Most significantly, she became pregnant a few months after the incident by a married man, which was particularly scandalous at the time. Civil rights leaders felt they needed a plaintiff who would be beyond reproach in the eyes of both the black community and potential white allies. While this was a painful decision that marginalized Colvin's contribution for decades, it reflected the strategic realities of organizing in the deeply racist South of the 1950s. On December 1, 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus and was arrested. Parks was 42, employed, married, and active in the NAACP with a reputation for respectability. Her arrest sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted 381 days and catapulted Martin Luther King Jr. to national prominence. Colvin supported the boycott and didn't express resentment toward Parks, though she did feel hurt that her own act of resistance was essentially erased from the narrative. Despite not being the public face of the movement, Colvin played a crucial legal role. On February 1, 1956, civil rights attorney Fred Gray filed Browder v. Gale in federal court, challenging the constitutionality of Montgomery's bus segregation laws. The case was named after Aurelia Browder, but included for plaintiffs all women who had been mistreated on Montgomery buses. Claudette Colvin was one of them, along with Aurelia Browder, Susie McDonald, and Mary Louise Smith. At 16, Colvin testified in federal court about her arrest and the conditions on the buses. Her testimony was clear and compelling. On June 5, 1956, a 3-judge federal panel ruled 2-1 that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The city of Montgomery appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, which on November 13, 1956, upheld the lower court's decision. This legal victory, not the boycott itself, was what actually ended bus segregation in Montgomery. The boycott ended on December 20, 1956, After the Supreme Court's written order arrived in Montgomery, the years following her activism were difficult for Colvin. She faced harassment in Montgomery and struggled to find work. She had a second son, Randy, and eventually moved to New York City in 1958. Seeking a fresh start and escaping the negative attention, in New York, she worked for many years as a nurse's aide in a Manhattan nursing home. She raised her 2 sons as a single mom. She died on January 13, 2026, at age 86.